All right. Good evening, and thank you for reviewing the March 18th meeting of the Arcata City Council. As you know, the City Council meeting is being held telephonically in response to local efforts to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Before we start, I want to thank the community for their efforts to practice social distancing and isolate as requested or needed. There's no doubt this is a challenging emergency. I'm confident that we will meet this challenge as a community. And I have already seen the generosity of people reaching out to senior and medically isolated residents to assist them in safely self-quarantining. And I have received that assistance, and my family has received that assistance. Right. First, starting with a few teleconferencing tips. First and most importantly, if you are not actively speaking, please mute your microphone. The meeting will be difficult to hear if microphones are not muted except for the individual speaking. I cannot emphasize this enough. Second, all votes will be taken through a roll call vote. Please answer aye or nay when your name is called. Lastly, public comment was accepted via email and in writing from both specific agenda items and general comments until 5 p.m. today. Comments on specific agenda items will be read by staff during that agenda item. Written and emailed comments for public comment will be read under item 11, public comment section. A connection to the meeting is also available to make comments during the meeting at City Hall. If you are attending the meeting in person, please adhere to the practices of social distancing. Right. As far as a closed session, we had one item on the closed session agenda, and we voted to authorize the participation in a local government consortium litigation. And now, if you choose, please join me for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk Dory, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor, this is City Manager Deemer. Mayor Winkler, present.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Patino.
Present.
Councilmember Pereira.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Councilmember Susan Ornelas' resignation is on your consent calendar this evening, and she is not present. Thank you.
All right, first is ceremonial matters. On this agenda, we have two ceremonial matters: a proclamation in recognition of welcoming home Vietnam Veterans Day, which has been requested to be deferred to a later meeting, and a proclamation recognizing March 27th or 23rd through 27th, 2020 as Tsunami Preparedness Week, which will be forwarded to the National Weather Services local office. We have no reports by commission or committee tonight. City Manager Deemer, do we have anyone present to make early oral comment?
We have nobody present in the chambers to make early oral communications, and any email communications we received, I will report in at the later oral communications. Thank you.
Right. Next is the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of March 4th, 2020. B, biweekly report on general warrants. C, reappoint Michael Furness and Russ Forsberg to the Forest Management Committee, Vanessa Metz to the Wetlands and Creeks Committee, and Jane McGuire and Zane Brotherton to the Parks and Recreation Committee for the new 3-year terms ending March 31st, 2023. D, reappoint Mary Ella Anderson Sue Cashman, and Josh Wolf to the Transportation Safety Committee for new 3-year terms ending March 31st, 2023. Reappoint Judith Mayer to the Planning Commission for a term ending March 31st, 2024. F, adopt resolution number 190-60, incorporating a list of projects for the fiscal year 2020-2021 to be funded by SB1, the Road Repair and Accountability Act. G, award of bid for the Fish Passage retrofit at the Alliance Road culvert at Janes Creek to Hooven Construction in the amount of $60,835. Authorize the city engineer to increase the contract by up to $12,167, 12%, for a total of $73,002 as necessary to allow for any unforeseen contingencies, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. H, adopt resolution number 190-57, authorizing the adoption of the Humboldt Operational Area Hazard Mitigation Plan 2020 update. Authorize staff to make non-policy related changes to the plan if requested per Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA plan approval review, and authorize staff to make application to the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Grant Program and Hazard Mitigation Grant Program to secure funds to implement projects identified in the Humboldt Operational Area Hazard Mitigation Plan. I, adopt resolution number 190-58, approving the filing of an application for grant funds from the Urban Flood Control Program, California Resources Agency. J, adopt ordinance number 1531, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Arcata Municipal Code to adjust council members' salary, Title II, Administration, Chapter 1, Council, Section 2010, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only. K, approve a proclamation in recognition of World Tai Chi Day, April 25th, 2020. And L, accept letter of resignation from council member Susan Ornelas, effective March 10th, 2020. Council member Pereira, would you like to pull any item from the consent calendar?
No.
Council member Watson, would you like to pull any item from the consent calendar?
No.
Council member Patino, would you like to pull any item from the consent calendar?
No.
All right. I would like to pull item H. Is Engineer Catry available now to speak on this matter? I will.
He is on the call. I can answer a question as well. This is Karen Deemer.
All right. I discussed this with Engineer Catry, and I said that certain, especially under circumstances, that I believe that we should suggest that an item be added for epidemics or pandemics to the list that currently does not include that as one of the hazards.
Yeah, I appreciate that potential addition, Mayor, and we have reached out to the county who coordinates the hazard mitigation plan, Humboldt County-wide, and I think there are several entities that are looking to add potential projects associated with pandemic planning, and so they will re-meet as a group to look at amendment to the plan. The recommendation tonight is to move forward with the adoption of what's before you. And you're happy to make the caveat to bring the group back together, to work on an updated version to include epidemic or pandemic. There is one reference to pandemic or sort of a medical emergency in the county's annex that we could tier from. And I think it would certainly be wise. Right now, it is unclear as to whether or not Cal OES would allow us to update to add a medical emergency, but I think we can work through all that clarification We do have an active grant with this program right now, and so we would like to see this adopted tonight just to make sure that we don't have any funding gaps in that grant. And then we can bring back an amendment to the council once we can work through the regional process.
Right. Thank you. So I will accept the motion from the council.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
City Manager Deemer, do we have any public requests to pull any items from the consent calendar?
We do not have any public requests, and we do not have any public comment on this item.
All right, I will do a poll of the council members. So Council Member Pereira,
Aye.
Council Member Watson,
Yes.
Council Member Patino,
Yes.
and I vote aye. All right. Next is old business that on items A and C, I have previously shared that I have a conflict of interest arising from my business with Danco. And on item B, I have a remote conflict arising from my domestic partner's employment with Open Door. So I will turn the session over to Vice Mayor Patino and recuse myself on these items.
Thanks, Mayor Mayor Winkler. Item A under old business is introducing the ordinance 1524, approving a development agreement for the Creekside Homes project. I guess we'll start with Director Loya with the staff report.
We'll just give them another second to connect here.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Apologize. Before you tonight is the introduction of Ordinance 1524, which will approve the development agreement for the Creekside Homes project. As you recall, on your February 5, 2020 City Council meeting, you adopted the resolution certifying the EIR and approved several other elements of this project. The text of the development agreement itself was still being finalized at that time, and so we asked for a continuance, and so we are bringing that item back before you. Staff recommends the council introduce Ordinance 1524, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata approving the development agreement for the Creekside Homes project, waive reading of the text, and consent to read by title only, and then continue this item to April 1st, 2020 to adopt Ordinance 1524. Within it is to authorize the city manager to finalize and execute and record the development agreement that's contained as Exhibit 1 to the ordinance. The language that was finalized is on your packet page 67, and it follows the terms that were in your last packets on this topic. The applicant, Chris Start, is on the line as well and would be happy to answer any questions, as would I. That's all I have for you tonight.
Great. Thanks, David. Any comments from Chris Start, developers representative? Anything you want to say?
No, I mean, I've been working with city staff on the development agreement, and I just appreciate their work on it. And I think it's from our perspective, it's in full form, and we're happy with it. And thanks for your consideration and supporting this project. That's all I have to say. I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. I'll ask for questions now. Councilmember Pereira, any questions for the developer?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Councilmember Watson, any questions?
I do not.
Okay, now we can take public comment if there is any live comment there. And then maybe if there's some emails been sent in recently, we could have them read to us.
We did not receive any email communication on this agenda item, and we do have nobody in the council chambers for public comment on this item tonight. Thank you.
Okay, any final questions or comments from the council member? Council members, let's start with Council Member Watson.
I don't have any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the question?
Yeah, thank you. Council Member Pereira, any questions?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, so I'll move to introduce ordinance number 1524, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata approving a development agreement for the Creekside Homes project, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only, and to also continue the item to the April 1st, 2020 meeting to adopt ordinance number 1524 and authorize the city manager to finalize, execute, and record the development agreement.
Thank you. So we're waiting for a second.
Would you like to roll?
I will make a
would you like me to
second.
roll call that?
Okay, Brett, thank you. So we've got a second from Brett, motion from Sophia. And so now I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Pereira,
Aye.
Councilmember Watson,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
3, yeah. Okay, so that motion, that item is over. Let's look at item B now. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item B is approve the Arcata Community Health Center project and introduce development agreement ordinance number 1530. And I guess we'll start again with Director Loya.
Yeah, this time I'll actually unmute myself first. Good evening, Council, again. Before you tonight on this item is the approval of the Arcata Community Health Center project. You did receive a staff report on this where all of the meeting materials were presented at the last meeting. And we did go over several questions that were addressed in the staff report this time, which I'll address in part. And we also have Director Khatri and Director Andre, who would be available to answer any questions that you have as well. I do have some visuals. If it's all right with City Manager Deemer, I'd like to share those.
Yeah, go ahead and share at this time.
Okay. So in short, the recommendation is to adopt Resolution 19053. This resolution will certify the environmental impact report and adopt findings of fact and a statement of overriding considerations for the transportation impacts that were identified in the EIR. Adopt the City Council action, which is your attachment B, which would approve the discretionary permits associated with the project. And then introduce Ordinance 1530, which is the development agreement associated with the project. Again, we'd be recommending that you waive reading the text and consent to read by title only. And then continue this item to April 1st, 2020 for adoption of that ordinance. The resolution is found on page 191, or I'm sorry, page 91. The action is on page 126. And the site plans, which are represented here, are on page 141. There were several questions about site planning, and I'm prepared to show visuals tonight on those, but I won't go into them if there aren't further detail. But there were some questions about the bus stop, the skate park parking, traffic and safety on Foster Avenue, and the wetland mitigation site that I just wanted to refresh you on. Director Kotry will address the traffic impacts, but I did want to show you that there's approximately 200 feet distance between the intersection of Sunset and Foster and the opening to the project, which is part of the reason we recommended retaining the ingress and egress where it is now. This is a visual of the proposed bus stop up near the skate park. So just to orient you a little bit here, if you can see my cursor, the existing curb is out in this area here with the 2 trees in it. What we're proposing to do is to pull that back and allow for a 10-foot space out of the lane of traffic here for the bus to pull over and stop. The remainder of the drop-off zone would remain the same, and so people would still be able to come here and drop off people going to the skate park and then leave through that exit there. Part of the rationale for the recommendation here is it's the safest location for the bus to exit the traffic lanes and pick up and drop off people as close to that facility, the new facility, and other facilities that the buses would be dropping off for as can possibly be. We did note that in the staff report that there is parking at Larson Park, which is a short walking distance to the skate park, recognizing that, as was addressed in the last hearing on this item, that we will be losing a few spaces at this location right here. Again, Director Kotry can address this in more detail as necessary. The other item I wanted to share with you was there was a question as to whether or not the wetland mitigation site that's in the new Shea Park was going to interfere with the traffic improvements that are planned for Alliance and Foster. I have for you here an image showing the proposed round. This is just schematic, so it would, in construction, perhaps be slightly different than what's shown here. But the design is really outside of the existing curb cut. And while I don't have these overlaid, I wanted to show you that this dark line on the right-hand side of the screen here represents where the new wetland mitigation will be. And so the reference point is this sidewalk at the corner of Foster and Alliance, which you can see the improvements are clearly outside of the wetland area. That came up as a question last time, so I wanted to be able to address that for you tonight. I have several other visuals that I'll hold until and unless discussion warrants showing them, but you did have a fairly robust and detailed staff report last time, and unless there are additional questions, I'm happy to turn the staff report over to the other directors if they have points that they'd like to make, or the City Council for discussion, questions, and deliberations.
Thanks, David. So do we have anything from Natra or Mark?
This is Mark. I think Director Lloyd covered it, unless there's any specific questions. The wetland mitigation is definitely a value-added landscape enhancement to that part of the of Shea Park. So we're working closely with the Open Door and their agents on making sure that successfully integrates in with the park.
I should also mention that
Director Kotry, do you have anything you wanted to say?
I should also mention that the applicant is also represented tonight and may have some information for the council if they're interested.
Thank you. Any preliminary council questions at this point? Councilmember Pereira?
No, thank you, though.
Councilmember Watson?
No.
Okay, I had one question. The pathway from the skate park to Larson Park, I mean, is there existing pathway so they can park up there and get down to the skate park?
Mark,
To
did you
whoever.
This is Mark Andre.
Yeah,
It's a rough pathway. There's an elevation shift there, but we're working on converting that rail corridor to the trail towards Annie Mary. So it's in the planning process. Right now, it's a rough connection, but there is a connection. There's just an elevation shift. It's not an elegant, smooth pathway currently.
right. So my feeling is that the people that want to skate at the skate park, they could park in Larson Park, pick up their skateboard and walk down to the skate park. So, I mean, that's,
It's feasible. It's feasible, yes, but it's not. It's probably a shorter walk if you parked on, the city street. But it's feasible, yeah.
at this point, I think I'd like to hear, excuse me.
Yeah, our city engineer, Nature Khatri, is
Oh, there you go.
available if you have.
Hey,
So-
Paul and council member, or mayor, actually. Good evening, this is Netra. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties with my phone. So do you have any specific question, or what I wanted to add on what Dave and Mark added was, in future, there will be a trail connecting Larson Park and Skate Park through the railroad corridor, which will be part of the Annie Mary Trail. So there will be a connectivity between those two parks. So where people could come and park at the Larson Park parking area and then skate from there to the skate park.
Thank you. I think at this point, we could have the developer's representative make comments if they choose to.
Hi, this is Laura. My name's Laura. Nice to see you all. I'm owner's project representative and project manager for Open Doors Community Health Centers. And I am very excited that despite the current healthcare crisis, our Arcata Community Health Center project has reached this project permitting and approval milestone. Thank you, City Council members and mayors Winkler, Patino, Pereira, and Watson for holding this meeting. I really appreciate it. It helps our schedule, and I appreciate that you're allowing business to continue despite the crisis. And thank you, staff, for making it technologically possible, and for all the work that you have done to put the final EIR packet and all the findings and resolutions together. 2 weeks ago, we introduced the Arcata Community Health Center project's objectives, its site plan, the building elevations, and the schedule. And this week, we're asking you to approve the project's plan development permit and design review permit and our CEQA final EIR finding. As well as staff mentioned, we are introducing our development agreement for adoption at your next meeting, an ordinance for the development agreement. Cheyenne Spetzler is on the line, and we have other staff members on the line, but primarily I'm available to answer your questions. And I just want to say thank you for your consideration and your support on this project. I guess in closing, I thought that it's very serendipitous that this project is at this point tonight. I think that the fact that the current open door facilities are somewhat in a critical state is like I said, serendipitous. And I really feel that this new health center will help our community be more prepared for something like this in the future. So thank you again, and I'm willing to take any of your questions.
So, council members, if you have any questions, I'll start with Council Member Pereira. Do you have some questions of the developer?
I don't have any questions, but since I didn't get to say this last time, I just want to say I'm really excited about this project. And Laura, I think your point is very well taken about how this timing shows the importance of having really sound and functional healthcare facilities. And so just really appreciate the work that Open Door has done to get it to this point. And I think it's going to be a really great addition to our community. So I just wanted to not, I didn't want to undersell the importance of this project to our community.
Thank you, Councilmember Pereira. Councilmember Watson, do you have any questions or comments on the project or for the developer?
Just to kind of piggyback a little bit on Councilmember Pereira's comments, I'd also like to say thank you to Open Door for working so hard to provide this resource to our community. Open Door is a tremendous asset and a gift to all they serve, and in many ways, they represent all that is good about Arcata. I don't know that there is a health provider as invested in this community as they are. And despite everything they're dealing with right now with a significantly increased demand on our medical infrastructure, they're still attending this meeting tonight, which I feel shows their total commitment to our community.
Thanks, Councilmember Watson. I'll now take some public comment if we have any live comment there, or Director Deemer could read us the emailed comment, if there are any.
We don't have any public comment here on the Open Door Clinic, and nothing came in via email.
Okay, fine, thank you. So I guess, are there any final questions or comments from the council members?
Not for me. I'm ready to make a motion or a second.
Councilmember Pereira, did you have anything else to say?
No, I'm
Okay.
happy to make the motion.
Yeah, I think Brett was ready to go.
Oh, go.
No, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Whoever will
Sorry.
speak it into the record. I'll
Go
make
for
a
it.
motion to adopt resolution number 190-53. And the action of the City Council, introduce ordinance number 1530, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata approving a development agreement for the Arcata Community Health Center project, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only, and continue the item to the April 1st, 2020 regularly scheduled City Council meeting to adopt ordinance number 1530 on the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll take a roll call vote on that. So, Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pereira,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So we're 3-0. Thank you. So at this point, we can go on to our next item, C. And that's to consider eligible projects for the State Community Development Block Grant 2019-2020 funding cycle, and consider adopting Resolution 19062, authorizing an application for the Isaacson's project. Again, we'll go with Director Loya's presentation or comments on this.
Thank you again, Vice Mayor Patino and Council. This item for you tonight is to commit locally held program income to the Isaacson's project by adopting Resolution 190-62. The council has previously indicated its interest in supporting this project, and in our earlier discussions, we weren't sure whether or not we'd have access to the funds that we hold locally, not knowing exactly what the status of our existing grant and those expenditures would be. It appears at this point that we would be eligible for an over-the-counter grant with the Community Development Block Grant. And so this resolution authorizes us to make that application. Part of the requirement for applying for the grant requires that we consider other projects as well. So your attachment B lists several items that have been carried forward over the years that have been considered for community development block grant funding. At this point, because of the investment that we already have in the Isaacson's project, we would recommend that you instead focus and take that project over the finish line by adopting this resolution. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. It is a public hearing, so it's important to take public comment on this project as well.
Thank you, Director Loya. Are there any comments from the developer's representative?
I don't see that he's on the line still.
Okay, is that Chris Dart again?
It would be.
So I guess not, huh?
I don't believe he has comment.
Okay, so let's see if we have any questions from the council. So I'll start with Councilmember Pereira. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Councilmember Watson, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, so do we have any public comment? Live people there in the audience or any written in comments?
We did not receive any written comments, and I don't have anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the Isaacson's development here.
Thank you. So we have, I guess we're waiting for a motion unless there's any final comments from Councilmember Watson or Pereira.
I will go ahead and make a motion to adopt resolution number 190-62, authorizing the submission of a grant application for up to $700,000 for the Isaacson's affordable housing project.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will have a roll call vote. Councilmember Pereira?
Aye.
Councilmember Watson?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you. So we're 3-0 and we're on to the next item, D, which Mayor Winkler will take over and run the meeting. So,
Thank you.
All right, proceeding next is item D, receive a report by Bartle Wells Associates regarding preliminary water and sewer rates and provide direction to staff.
Okay, Director Andre is going to do an intro into this item as Doug, go ahead and reshare your slideshow and get that prepped. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll do a brief intro on this item. Back in September 2019, the Council authorized an agreement with Bartle Wells Associates to perform a water and wastewater rate study. And since that time, they've been working closely with the Finance Department, Environmental Services Department, and Engineering Division to craft an updated rate structure that meets the city's needs for operations and capital projects, and to propose rate for a 5-year period. This involved quite a bit of back and forth, especially with the Finance Department, looking at our books, and with the goal initially to generate a rate structure that would fund our capital projects, primarily the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project, which is the most sizable project for debt service that we are trying to build a rate structure for. We added water as a rate analysis as well, because our water and sewer in Arcata are linked. They're on the same bill, and they're really tied together. In terms of water, and I'll let the consultant Abigail Seaman or Doug Dove's going to lead it, and Abigail Seaman is online too, and they both work to get to this point. But for water, a lot of it had to do with the recent case study and Prop 218 compliance, creating parity, fairness between the different rate types, such as commercial and residential. So, and you'll hear from them too about how, and we've mentioned this briefly in our goal sessions, how city facilities are now, such as parks, grounds, buildings, are going to have to also fund, self-fund water and wastewater in the future. So we'll get through the presentation and try to sum up what potential next steps there are. There are some decision points for you, some options here to look at. You know, if we come back in April or later to set a Prop 218 rate hearing, that will involve the mailing out the rate notice that you'll have to approve at a future council meeting. But tonight, we just wanted to go over in detail with Bartle Wells what they discovered and what we're proposing that will fund these important city functions over the next 5-year period. It's important to know that our previous 5-year rate increase, which timed out just this last year, did contribute quite a bit of funding towards capital projects, especially the wastewater treatment plant. That alone wasn't enough to get us there, but it's created a healthy reserve in both water and wastewater for us to be able to be in a good position to move forward with grant loans in order to to fund the capital projects, which are the main drivers here. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Doug Dove here and let him go through the PowerPoint, and they're here to answer questions as well, and we'll get back to Finance Director Andrea, I believe, is on, as well as Roby Class. I'm looking to see if he's on there too. So anyway, we'll now turn it over to Bartle Wells Associates.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. Mayor Winkler, members of the City Council. My name is Doug Dove. I'm a principal consultant with Bartle Wells Associates, and we have been working with staff over about the past 4 months on an update of the water and sewer rates. And what we want to present tonight is preliminary recommendations, and we're looking for your input and feedback on these preliminary recommendations. And obviously the world has changed a lot in the last few weeks. We had a time frame in mind of going to a public hearing in May, and the first step of a 5-year rate increase effective July 1st of 2020. However, here we are with our coronavirus pandemic. And so we'll continue on to present the recommendations for the rates. First, I'm going to start with water. And the presentation's about 15 minutes for water. And feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions, or we'll stop at the end of the water presentation and have time for questions. A big element of both utilities is the capital project needs. And the water system needs about $15 million in capital over the next 5 years. And the wastewater system needs about $81 million in capital. So combined, that's about $96 million over the next 5 years. It's a very significant investment in your system. Okay, so I'm just going to first discuss your current rates, then talk about the costs of providing the water and wastewater service, and we're going to look at different rate alternatives, and we're going to recommend the proposed alternative that we think is most appropriate for the city, and we'd like to receive feedback. So again, the water rate study for your current rates, you have a fixed charge every month for all customers that is levied regardless of water use, and that covers a lot of your fixed costs. And there's also a volumetric charge based on the amount of water consumed. But right now I'm looking at the fixed charge, the monthly charge. Your basic residence has a 5/8 inch or 3/4 inch meter. And the current rate for inside the city is $13.76 per month fixed charge. Now, the charges vary for larger meters, and all the way up to a 10-inch meter, that would be about $889. And the reason those are higher for the big meters is that the big meters can place a much bigger demand on your system than the small meters. And is standard industry practice to proportion those charges based on the capacity that they can demand on the system. Now, you also have rates for outside the city. This is primarily the Jacoby Creek Water District, and so they have higher rates. And there's some additional facilities that are needed to serve outside the city, so they are assessed a higher charge. The rates are governed by Proposition 218, and that was approved in 1996. And it's been interpreted by the courts through a variety of legal decisions over the years. And what we're seeing now is a lot of litigation, particularly on water rates, and particularly in the area of tiered rates. And there's some opportunistic lawyers who are looking at cities' water rates and special districts' water rates. And there was a recent class action lawsuit filed a couple weeks ago against 81 different water providers, municipal water agencies, and primarily questioning the tiered rate structure and whether that was compliant with Prop 218. There was recently, in 2015, a judgment in the San Juan Capistrano case, where the city of San Juan Capistrano had a tiered rate structure, and they had just developed this structure to encourage conservation. And the low tiers were very low, and the high tiers were significantly higher, $10 or $11 per water unit. And so those rates were challenged, and the city could not provide a justification for the high $11 per unit rate. And so that judgment and that decision has really changed the interpretation of water rates. And now we need to carefully justify all of the tiers. If we're going to charge tiers, we have to have a careful cost of service basis for those tiers. And sometimes agencies have a number of water supplies. For example, Santa Barbara has about 5 different water supplies, and it ranges from wells all the way up to desalination. And so they can justify a bunch of different tiered rates based on those different water supplies. But for Arcata, you primarily have the wholesale water from Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. And we're going to look at possibly transitioning to a single tier rate. Another thing is a lot of your city accounts are currently not charged for water. And as part of other litigation, that has become clear that you need to charge yourselves for water, and so that nobody is subsidizing anybody else. So we're also going to look at the outside of the city charges, and those also need to be based on the costs of providing the service to the customers outside the city. And so we have essentially for water, we're recommending a rate structure adjustment. The rate increase is not that significant as far as generating revenues, but we do want to restructure the rate so that we're in a real good position with respect to Proposition 218, and so that you're not a target for lawsuits. The fixed meter charges are based on the capacity of the meters, and your current ratios are slightly off of what the current American Water Works Association capacity factors are. So we're proposing to realign those with the AWWA capacity factors, and that's based on the maximum flow of the meters. Your volumetric rates are in a 3-tier structure currently for residential. For non-residential, you have a single tier, but for residential, you have 3 tiers. And the first tier for inside the city is about $3.51 per unit of water. And a unit of water is 100 cubic feet of volume, which is 748 gallons. So that first tier rate is about 0.4 cents per gallon when you do the math. Now, the second tier for inside the city is slightly higher at $3.78. And then the third tier is at $7.40. So significant jump up to that third tier. And then for the outside of the city, the tiers are $3.69 for tier 1, $3.97 for tier 2, and $7.78. Then for commercial and non-residential, your inside the city single rate is $7.40, which is equivalent to tier 3 of the residential. And then outside the city, it's $9.25. So as I mentioned, the San Juan Capistrano case has resulted in a lot of agencies adjusting their tier structures and typically reducing the number of tiers to what they can absolutely justify based on the costs. And so your water system's in good financial health. You have good reserves. You're in a good position to fund your upcoming capital projects. We did 5-year projections, including 3% and in some cases higher inflation per year on different expenses. And what we find is that you need about a 1.5% annual revenue increase to stay in good financial health. So very modest increase each year of the 5 years. However, with the restructuring of the rates that we're recommending, some customers are going to see a higher increase than that, some a little bit lower. But in all cases, we're going to keep your water fund in good financial health. The capital, as I mentioned, there's about $15.3 million in capital for the 5-year period for water. And that includes a steel water line replacement project for $5 million, a water tank 1C for $2 million, the Plunkett water line improvements for $2.3 million, and general water repair and replacement projects for $6 million. And of the 15 total, we're projecting about $5.2 million will come from grants. And the rest would come from funding through the rates, through the revenues generated by the rates, and we're not projecting any additional borrowing in water. So with the coronavirus situation, there may be some sort of a stimulus package. I haven't heard of any specifics, but we'll be monitoring that. And it's possible that there could be additional grant funding, who knows. But based on what we what we have at this point, we're looking at 1.5% revenue increase per year for water. Now the fixed charge, when we look at the costs, a lot of the fixed costs are recovered from these monthly fixed charges, which you pay regardless of whether you use water. If you go on vacation, you still pay the fixed charge, even if you use no water. So we're also recommending for the outside of the city customers that their fixed charges be 1.5 times the inside of the city, based on additional facilities that are required to serve them and the costs of maintaining those. So for the fixed charges, we're recommending a slight reduction for the basic residential. The current rate is around $13, and that would go down to $11.52. By the same token, we're also recommending an increase in the volumetric rate. And so the volumetric charge, as I mentioned, it varied from $3.51 to $7.40 over the 3 tiers. With the restructuring of the rates, that would go to $6.74 for inside the city. And since most of the water is bought from Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, there's no difference in price, whether we sell it inside the city or outside the city. So we're recommending that the volumetric rate be the same for all customers. And that volumetric revenue will provide about 80% of your revenue, and that will provide a good conservation incentive. Customers will have a good flexibility in controlling their bills. If they cut back, they'll be able to reduce their costs. And we think that this single volumetric rate, single tier, really is bulletproof with Prop 218. And with your water supply situation, we think it's the way to go. So that's the water. Now, with the change to the single tier volumetric structure, in the first year, that would be a significant increase to low users. And so we're proposing a phase-in of that. Instead of going directly to the $6.74 per unit rate, we're recommending a phase-in for the first year of $5 for everybody. Everybody would pay $5 per unit of water. And that would allow folks to not have a big shock in their costs, because we're switching to a different rate structure. And so the cost of that is about $1.1 million. And again, that would be to phase in this change of rate structure. And even with that fund balance contribution, you're still going to be in excellent financial health, and you're going to be above your fund targets. And we think that it makes a lot of sense to do that phase in. So a comparison of the fixed charges, we've got the current fixed charge for a 5/8 inch meter is $13.76, and that would go to $11.52. And similarly, the outside of the city would be, currently it's $26.50. That would go to $17.29. And your comparison for your water is inside the city. You can see here $3.51 is the current tier 1, and that would go to $6.74 under the calculation with no phase in, but we're recommending that it go to the $5 with the phase in. So a survey of your surrounding water agencies shows that your current monthly cost for a single-family home is about $28.07. And if we go to the new water rate structure with the phase-in, that typical single-family home cost would go up to $31.52. If we do not do the phase-in, it would go up to $38.47. And you can see you're still in the middle of the range of the surrounding communities. So we think this is an important change to make to your rate structure so that it will be very defensible in case of any challenge from attorneys on that. So with that, I'd like to pause and get any questions or feedback on the water rates before we go to the wastewater rates.
I will now ask for questions from the council by roll call. So Vice Mayor Patino, do you have any questions for the presenter?
Yes, I do. I would say my first question is, if I look at the proposed water rates, page 9 of your presentation, the monthly fixed charges, you'll look at, part of the problem I have here is you're showing me the proposed rates. You don't have the current rates right next to that so I can discuss it. I had to write them down, and let me say that for the 2-inch line, the 2-inch line currently is $61.42, and you're saying you're going to lower that 2-inch line to $51.74 inside the city. But it seems like all the other lines are going up. And I don't understand why that 2-inch line stands out dropping where all the other lines are going up above that and going up significantly.
Yeah, it's the charges for all these different meter sizes are proportioned based on the capacity of the meter. So,
I get that. I get that, but what were we working on before that? This is so different for the 2-inch line. It's so odd looking to me. I guess I don't understand. We weren't using AWWA numbers for our meters?
well, there have been different ratios used by different rate consultants over the years, and the meters have changed somewhat, and so we're using the current AWWA capacity ratings, the most up to date, and also sometimes there's some charges that get added on to the bill that don't get ratioed with for example, you might add a $5 across the board charge to every meter for some purpose.
Right. Okay.
So they tend to these meter charges tend to vary from the true capacity ratio over time. So we're recommending that we just realign it with the capacity ratio.
Okay, I understand that. Is there a way for us to have the number of customers in each one of these meter size categories? I mean, do we have anybody that takes a 10-inch line or an 8 or a 6 or a 4? Or do we have a bunch of people on 2- and 3-inch lines? I guess what I'm really getting at is how many people are on that line? So if I have a 2-inch line and I got 40 people, and I got a 2-inch line and I got 80 people, they're different things as far as monthly fixed charge and what would be equitable.
Yeah, there was a packet of tables that I believe was included in the packet that was sent to the council. And there was a bunch of supporting tables for water and for wastewater. And so in there was a summary of the different meters. And inside the city, you have about 5,728 meters. And outside the city, you have about 532 meters. So you have about 5,700 of the smallest meters, which are 3/4 or lower. And there's about 187 2-inch meters, according to this survey. So by far the vast number is the small residential meters, but you do have some larger meters. You have one 10-inch meter, one 8-inch meter, and looks like a 4-inch meter. So yeah, there's most of your meters are 1 inch and below, but you do have a few, and there's about 187 of the 2-inch meters according to our record.
Okay, yeah, I see that. I understand that. So I guess what I'm getting at is, who has a 2-inch meter? It's not a fourplex. It's got to be bigger, right? I mean, so it's got to be how many people? 40 units or 30 units or whatever. And when I look at that and I go, is that, comparable? And I just haven't really figured it out yet.
Well, the recommended rates, the 2-inch meter the charge will be proportional to the flow that the 2-inch meter can produce, as compared to, the 3/4 inch meter.
If I could also point out, my name is Abigail Seaman. I work closely with Doug Dove. I'm a consultant with Bartle Wells. I just want to point out the $61.42 is the proposed rate, and the $50 something is the current rate. So that 2-inch rate is going up. $51.74 is the current. $61.42 is the proposed.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, and I guess the problem for me was they weren't next to each other, so that it was easy to make that mistake.
Sure. Thank you for your feedback. We're showing it up on the slide here.
Okay, yeah, that would be great to have as a comparison. I don't think I got that.
No, we added this up just today.
Oh, thanks. That
Yeah.
That would have saved me a little bit of time.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, I think there's one other question that I had, but it has to do with the volume charges. So I think I'm done there.
Okay, you want to ask the question about the volume charge?
Not at this moment.
Okay.
Councilmember Pereira, do you have any questions for the presenter?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Watson?
I do not.
Right. One question that I have is, have other cities done phase-ins, and if so, have any of them been challenged as being unfair and in violation of Proposition 218?
We do phase-ins all the time, and my knowledge, none of them have been challenged. We believe that the phase-in that's being proposed is consistent with Prop 218, and so even if it were challenged, it would be withstand that challenge. Basically,
so Doug, this is Karen. I'm going to jump in just for a second. That's okay?
Sure.
I just want to make sure that the council understands that the proposed phase-in is being funded with current water reserve balance. So that $1.1 million is a substantial amount, but we would basically be funding that portion, that 1.1 million, out of our reserve to fund the water system that year. And I think it goes directly to Mayor Winkler, your question. The reason that it comports with 218 is because we're actually not phasing in we're not continuing to overcharge anyone to fund the phase-in. We are utilizing the existing reserves that have been built to fund that phase-in. Back to you, Doug.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, at this point, are you suggesting we bring in public comments or wait till the end?
We don't have anyone here for public comment, and we did not receive any written public comment. We did have one person come to the office earlier about this item, and we just assured her that this was just the presentation portion tonight, and that the actual setting of the rate hearing that would determine that final rate that would be charged would be at a later meeting. So no public comment.
All right, so Mr. Dove, please proceed then.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for your patience. This is kind of a long presentation with a lot of numbers, but that's kind of how rates end up being. So the current wastewater rates, you've got, again, a fixed charge every month. And in wastewater's case, the fixed charge includes a certain amount of usage. You can use up to 400 cubic foot of wastewater. And then if you use above that level, there's a volumetric charge. There's also a sewer repair fee, which is a monthly $5 charge for every account. And that is tied to a borrowing that was done some years ago for a project. And that sewer repair fee sunsets in 2022-23. So that will go away in a couple of years. But a residential monthly fixed charge is currently about $49.62. And a commercial monthly flat rate is $51.40. And the residential, if you go above 400 cubic foot of use, you have to pay a unit rate of $7.62 for every 100 cubic foot above the 4. And then the commercial volumetric rates are based on strength of wastewater. And so some waste is low strength, and that would typically be like from a laundromat or a car wash or a retail store where you don't really have food preparation. And the rate for that is $7.08. The medium strength commercial has a rate of $8.33. And that would be typically a bar or a hotel without dining or a hospital. And then there's the high strength commercial, which is typically food preparation, restaurants, bakeries, food production, and other similar types of uses. And so currently the commercial has a low strength gets 5 units with their minimum charge, medium gets 4 units, and high strength gets 2 units. And so just a note on how the water use is estimated for the return flow to sewer. Basically, in the wintertime, we don't expect much irrigation. So we use the water consumption numbers. In the summertime, we use the average winter use to estimate the sewer flow, because we don't want to charge people in the summer for irrigation, which is not really a sewer use. It's return to sewer. So we use winter water average in the summer. When we did our five-year projections, we found your wastewater system's in great financial shape. However, you're facing very significant capital investment over the next 5 years. The rate increases are really needed to fund that capital. If you didn't have the capital, just CPI increases would be fine. When we did our projections, we included cost of living 3% plus a little higher for certain expense categories and built those into our financial plan. And we maintained cash reserves, at least 30% of the operating and maintenance cost as per the reserve fund policy. And so on wastewater, because we're facing such a big capital investment, we're looking at revenue increases 10% per year for the first 3 years, and then 8% for each year in the 4th and 5th year. And so the revenue increase is significantly higher for wastewater, and that tracks directly to the capital improvement costs. So we looked at, as I mentioned, if we didn't have any capital projects, we would be fine with just CPI 3% increases each year. But we're looking at funding a big wastewater treatment plant, phase 1 and phase 2 improvement project. It's about $64 million. And of that, about $4.8 million would come from grants, and the rest would come from state revolving fund loans. And those are very low interest rate, and I think probably even much lower interest rate with the recent market shifts. And so we have heard some hints of stimulus programs, but nothing in specific terms. So we're estimating, most of the wastewater plant will be funded with these low interest state revolving fund loans. You also have about $2.2 million in levee improvements, $5 million in inflow and infiltration repairs, and $10 million in general repair and replacement over the term. So $81.6 million of capital is projected over the 5 years. So we're looking at those 3 10% increases followed by 2 8% increases. And the residential rate would, the first year would go up to $54.99. Commercial would go to $57.43. The sewer repair fee, as we mentioned, continues for a few more years. And then the volumetric rate, any use over 400 cubic foot a month would be charged at $8.19 for residential. And then for low strength commercial would be $7.08, medium at $8.50, and then high strength at $14.87. And with the rate update, we're looking at all customers receiving the first 400 cubic foot included in their commercial and residential fixed charge. So how does this compare? We have your current rates, $49.62, and the proposed rate, I think, is $54.71. I can't quite see it with the screen here, but basically, a 10% increase. And then when we look at the surrounding communities rates, you're currently about $54.62 a month for sewer for a single family home. That's a little below the average. And with this increase, the first year would go to $59.99. So still in the middle of the pack as far as the rates. And you're funding the significant capital improvement. We also did a combination of the water and sewer rates, and to look at the bills again with the combined bill, since they're both on the same bill, and you're currently at about $82.69 a month for a typical single-family home, and that's more than $10 below the average for the area. With the phase-in proposed on the water rates, the bill would go next year to $91.51. And without the phase-in, it would go up to $98. So still in the middle of the pack. So just a couple of words on the rate adoption process. You've been through this before. Prop 218 requires that the rates be mailed out to all the ratepayers at least 45 days before the public hearing, and have the date and time of the public hearing noted on that notice. So ratepayers are allowed to submit written protests to the rates. If they protest the rates, they have to submit them in writing. And if the protests are more than 50% of the total, then that would preclude moving forward with that particular rate proposal. It's very unusual to have a 50% protest, but it has happened. Another thing, the rates that are noticed are the maximum that can be implemented. If for some reason the project costs are lower, for example, if the financing costs are lower, or you get more grants, you can always implement lower rates, especially in the out years, so that oftentimes agencies adopt a maximum set of rates, and then if there's some cost savings or favorable cost events, then they can not implement the full increases in the future years. So with that, open it up for questions and comments. Thank you for your attention.
I will do this by roll call again. So Councilmember Ferreira, do you have any questions or comments?
I mean, in terms of comments, first of all, thank you so much for really walking through this. I think for folks that are, going to be, tuning into this, hopefully, I think it's really helpful to have that overview. And I just really appreciate the level of detail here. It does seem like doing a phase-in makes sense for a lot of reasons, and so I'll be interested to have this conversation with my colleagues here to see, which path we move forward on. But it seems like a phase-in would be fair, and I think also being able to see the comparison with the other cities on the North Coast was also really helpful to have that perspective too. Obviously, it's always hard to be raising rates and the impact it has on people, but to see that bigger picture is helpful. So thank you.
Right, Vice Mayor Patino, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question, and I think I've solved my volume question on the water, so I don't need that. But
good.
I just have a base question. We have a 3/4 water hookup to a house, one person in that house. Next door, you have a 3/4 water hookup to a house with a second unit and maybe even a third unit, and there's 9 people there. Those 9 are dividing that monthly fixed fee for that 3/4 inch line, and the one next door isn't sharing it with anybody. Is there some way we can come about to understand how many people are hooked up to the water lines, so that it's not just done on the possible volume, but actual on the ground information?
Well, the reason why we have 2 charges in water and wastewater, we have the fixed charge, which you pay regardless of your water use, and then the volumetric charge. And this is to model the costs as closely as possible. So, you know, everybody who has a 3/4 inch meter theoretically has the same capacity that they can draw on the system at one. So we're rationing the cost, the fixed cost of the system based on the capacity, relative capacity of the meter. Now, when you have a lot of residents, you're probably going to have higher water use. So you're going to be paying the volumetric charge on all that water use. So I think the two-part fee structure is well adapted to allocating the costs and recovering the costs fairly. You know, like when you go to the gas station, you don't pay any fixed charge. It's all 100% volumetric. And in other cases, you know, the charge is 100% fixed for other services. But I think the fairest way that we can set the rates is as we've proposed, with fixed charge and a volumetric charge. Some agencies do surveys of the number of residents, but that's a moving target, and people may or may not be, you know, responding accurately. But for practical reasons, I think a rate structure that similar to what we've proposed is very functional. It's fairly easy to administer, and you know, trying to track down the number of residents in each household would be difficult and time consuming. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it answers my question that we don't have that kind of system. And this is what we've used forever right here, as far as I know, for the past 20, 30 years that I've been involved. I understand what it is. I understand what you're doing and all that. I just look at on the ground. If the people, the half a dozen people that are hooked up to that 1/4 inch line, 3/4 inch line, versus the one person hooked up to the 3/4 inch line, if they are very frugal, their water bills could be very close. The total bill could be very close. So in reality, it's not equitable. I would say, some situations. We're a college town, a house with college students and their friends and whoever else is couch surfing there. They may be very careful about their shower, and they may not be using a great volume of water, but they're sharing that hookup. And that, you know, it's just a personal issue for me, and I understand we don't have a straight up way to change it. So thanks for your explanation.
Paul, this is Karen. I just wanted to remind, and we can dig into this a little deeper. I don't think it fully answers your question, but you probably recall last year when we made the change around how many hookups could be from 1 meter, and we got rid of that all other category when we did our last rate structure. And that was, you know, you ended up defining a unit and a second unit basically per meter before they got an additional charge. So moving forward, additional units would be required to put in a new meter and therefore pay another base rate. But I recognize that we have a lot of current infrastructure, you know, that could be played the way that you're describing. But we can dig into that a little bit more with that movement between all other category, which we got rid of, to single family residential or multifamily residential, and might be able to satisfy a portion of your concern.
Councilmember Watson. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you done, Paul?
Yeah, I was just thanking Karen.
All right. So, Councilmember Watson, do you have questions or comments?
I just have one question. How confident are we that we've captured all the current and future costs to deliver services? Or, you know, do we feel like there's a chance in the future that we may have to raise rates beyond what's being presented here.
I think we've been very prudent in projecting the costs, and we've been conservative. So there's margin for error, and our firm's been doing this for over 50 years, and the worst thing that could possibly happen is we would have to go back out again and say, didn't raise the rates enough, messed up. So we've been careful to include, I think, everything that we could reasonably expect. And there's no knowing everything, but I think we are very confident that these are adequate rates to get you through the next 5 years.
Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Arcata's had a tradition of encouraging people to conserve in many different ways, including water, and we have structured rates accordingly, but the voters in California have decided, and the courts have decided that method will no longer be allowed. So we have to be, unfortunately, consistent with the choice of the voters and adopt the rates that you were recommending. That, as you said, we have the reserve to cover the cost of phase-in, so we can reduce the shock on the users in Arcata, and then we will need to discuss collectively if that's the way we want to go and absorb. You said roughly $1 million that it would take if we do a phase-in rather than an immediate change to these higher rates.
Right.
Yeah, and I just want to add really quick, based off of Mayor Winkler's comments about using the reserves to cover an expense for now. I feel like we're talking more and more about using the reserves, and in the future, we very may well need to use those to cover other expenses. So as we move forward, I know our budget sessions are coming up. I just want us all to be really mindful how many earmarks we're placing there and not spending more than we have.
Right. We've checked with City Manager Deemer on public comments or in-person members of the public. You have said that there are none. So any other comments from the council, or if not, then I would entertain direction from council on how to proceed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great presentation. Really appreciate it, and happy to bring this back at our next agenda if staff needs some further direction or motion.
Karen, do you need any additional direction on this?
What we will bring back without direction in terms of whether or not you'd like to see a phased approach or have the entire thing brought back or charged in that first year. I think what we would bring back to you at your next meeting would be sort of a staff proposal associated with that. We would show you what both of those rates would look like and outline the 218 hearing process. And then between now and that meeting would give you some time to dig into the data a little bit more deeply. Certainly if you want to meet, with finance director or environmental services director about the rates, to be able to make a recommendation on which route you would like staff to send out in terms of rate notices. But I think it would be prudent, especially given the format of our meeting tonight, for you guys to take some time to go back and look at that data. We will present both alternatives for you in a rate, and you can make a decision at your next meeting.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Duff. That is all for this item. All right. Next is oral and written communications. You said earlier that we don't have any. Do we have any additional general comments that were submitted by the public?
We have one member of the public here in the audience. I believe he'd like to speak on COVID-19. So he's going to wait until that particular item. I have read through all of the oral comments that have come in by email, and I believe I will save all of those for under the COVID-19 item as well.
All right, so then we can go on from oral and written communications. So next is council and staff reports. And so first is a preliminary update by the Arcata Police Department regarding the recommendations of the National Police Foundation's report. Is Chief Ahern available to
Ahern
present?
is here. We're just going to have to do a switch of the chairs with our disinfection process. So it'll just take about 5 seconds. We did. Yeah.
Good evening, City Council members, City Manager, City staff, and community members. Tonight's presentation is an update on the process the Arcata Police Department is utilizing to implement all 36 recommendations contained in the National Police Foundation's assessment of the APD's response to the stabbing of HSU student David Josiah Lawson on April 15, 2017. A staff report was prepared for your review. Staff report provides a summary of the National Police Foundation review process as well as internal reviews conducted by Arcata Police Department staff and some of the changes already implemented to department operations, some of which are in alignment with what the National Police Foundation recommends. Understanding the unprecedented national and international impacts that COVID-19 is having in every community, the delivery of this staff report has been modified to ensure that all community members have access to the staff report in which this presentation is based. I will convert the staff report into a memorandum for all Arcata City Council members to have and share. As the National Police Foundation review was taking place, there was a leadership transition within the Arcata Police Department, beginning with Interim Chief Rick Ely. The City of Arcata and Chief Ely assembled a team of investigators who presented the Lawson murder investigation to the District Attorney's Office. The case remains an open investigation while a review of department operations has been ongoing for the past 16 months. The National Police Foundation assessment team cited training, organizational leadership, planning, and supervision as key areas to strengthen within the Arcata Police Department. Our goal throughout our organizational review was to incorporate best practices throughout all areas of department operations. When reviewing the 36 recommendations presented by the National Police Foundation, what we discovered is that while both reviews occurred independently, many of our findings are similar. Therefore, structural changes made within the department resulted in many of the National Police Foundation recommendations already being in place. Those structural changes include a restructuring of department operations to include clear and specific lines of command and control, leadership, and responsibility, re-implementation of an investigations division, developing a watch commander training program, and creating an administrative sergeant position to manage emergency preparedness and train on NIMS and ICS principles, while filling the patrol sergeant vacancy with field training officers who completed the watch commander training program. The field training officers rotate every 4 months into the role of acting sergeant, providing them the opportunity to practically apply the leadership, administrative, and supervisory skills they learned in the classroom while supervising a team of officers. Prior to the implementation of this training program, the Arcata Police Department was like many law enforcement agencies who have historically assigned officers to acting supervisory positions without providing the training to assist them in the transition to their new role. Examples of recommendations from the National Police Foundation that were put into place as a result of our internal review and restructuring include recommendations 1.1 and 1.2 in which principles of command and control of large-scale incidents should be trained on and utilized are both completed. Recommendations 2.1 and 2.2, in which training should be provided on supervisory and leadership principles, as well as the completion of a post-training needs assessment. The supervisory and leadership training is in place, and the training needs assessment has been completed and is awaiting post-review. Recommendations 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3, which emphasize training on investigative processes and principles, assigning staff with investigative skills to these critical positions, and seeking guidance from external resources to continue to refine our investigative procedures and protocols that are already in place. All of those have been implemented as APD has invested over 1,700 hours in training since July 2018 to include crime scene training, criminal investigations, homicide investigations, sexual assault investigations, officer-involved shooting investigations, critical incident management for managers and supervisors, violence intervention and prevention, as well as crimes against women. In addition, our field training program had not evolved over time, and we discovered that there were best practices in program implementation and evaluations that we were not utilizing. That has changed with 2 sergeants attending the 24-hour Field Training Officer Supervisory School and revamping our recruit field training program and guide. We have a process in place as well to train and select personnel for investigative assignments, and our plan is to utilize CALEA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, as one external resource for additional guidance on best practices. APD implemented an inspectional process to comply with equipment and training as recommended in 4.1. We now have a notification system in place as recommended in 6.1. And recommendations 16.1 and 16.2 are in place to provide support to family members of victims of violence, something we did not have in place prior to the National Police Foundation review, but we recognized during our internal review as a best practice we needed to incorporate into department operations. I would also like to utilize this opportunity tonight to implement Recommendation 17.1. Recommendation 17.1 is part of Lesson Learned 17, which reads as follows. APD officers demonstrated a primary focus on life-saving measures for the victim and the arrest of the suspect in the interest of public safety. Recommendation 17.1 reads as follows. The department should clearly and publicly recognize first responders' efforts made on scene to save the victim's life. At least 21 first responders from multiple agencies were involved in the response. Involved personnel consisted of officers, firefighters, ambulance personnel, and dispatchers from the Arcata Police Department, the Arcata Fire Department, Arcata Mad River Ambulance, Humboldt State University Police Department, California Highway Patrol, and the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department. Thank you all for your heroic efforts in trying to save Josiah's life. While I respect and appreciate the work of the National Police Foundation and their intent with this recommendation, there is much work to be done on the criminal investigation, and there will be no other recognition from the Arcata Police Department on this until this case gets back into court. In terms of Recommendation 19.1, building open and trusting relationships throughout Arcata and specifically with people of color, this is an ongoing process for us. We are public servants, and our commitment to police this city through the eyes of our community members and the shoes that they walk in is our unwavering commitment to all of you. And Recommendation 20.2 is in place as our internship program now consists of 6 job descriptions as we prepare for a launch in the fall 2020 semester. In total, 27 of the 36 recommendations are in place. In the months ahead, the Arcata Police Department will report out to you with updates on the implementation of all 36 recommendations. We will utilize the Arcata City Council meeting format to agendize each reporting out and to notice all documents used in the reporting out process. In addition to a staff report, you will be presented with a spreadsheet similar to the format utilized during your goal-setting process to provide you a summary of the status of implementing each recommendation, as well as a summary of what has been done to implement those already in place. The participation of community members in the implementation of these recommendations is paramount to ensuring we get this right. While tonight I presented the plan to implement every recommendation, the participation of community members is important both now and in the future. The city manager and I have engaged with community groups on all facets of city and police department operations, and our intent is to continue this process for the National Police Foundation assessment and report. Each of these recommendations must be implemented with the community's perspective in mind. The city manager and I will meet with any groups or individuals to discuss further the report and how best to chart a course for the future of the Arcata Police Department. Community members can reach us through the city manager's office or the police department. Community input and feedback will be incorporated into the implementation process to stand firm in our commitment to remain a community policing organization. Thank you for this opportunity tonight to not only report out before you, but for providing the department the format in which to seek direction and input from city leadership and community members. The National Police Foundation assessment and report is extensive, as are the changes already implemented within the organization and the ongoing process of reviewing department operations. There's a lot of information to consider as this process continues. This concludes the first reporting out. I would be happy to answer any questions or provide clarification on any information reported this evening. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Pereira, do you have any questions or comments for Chief Aker?
First of all, Chief, thank you so much for such a thorough presentation on the recommendations, what's already been implemented, or the process of implementation has already begun. Obviously, a lot of these recommendations are ongoing. I think the examples of training is just so important to keep going, and I know that you know that. So I just really appreciate your leadership in helping our community and our police department navigate through these changes. When I asked for this review early on in the process, didn't know what was going to be in that report, the level of detail that would be there. But reading through it, I just really appreciate the thoughtfulness in the report, the candidness in the report, and something that's really tangible in terms of how we move forward. So I'm just really glad that you're leading the police department through these systemic changes.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Right. Thank you. Councilmember Watson, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions right now. Thank you very much, Chief, for all the hard work you put into this, and I look forward just to continue to follow the progress we will continue to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor Patino.
Yeah, I just would echo Councilmember Watson, Councilmember Pereira's comments, and I'm looking forward to digging into it deeper as we move along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I'm very impressed by the seriousness that that you and the department have taken, and recognizing some of the deficiencies that were outlined in the Police Foundation report, and very actively pursuing responding to all 36 points that were raised by the Police Foundation report. And I think under the circumstances, we have much less community participation in this than we would have expected otherwise, and I hope in the future that there'll be more opportunities for the community to participate in this process.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Any other questions or comments from the council? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Next, something that obviously is under tremendous concern worldwide in our country and our community of the tremendous health challenge and that we face, and certainly unprecedented in any of our lifetimes.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to provide a quick update. I will say that the city's response to COVID-19 is changing no less than every 15 minutes, I would say, for the last 10 days at this point. But I would describe this city as currently operating at a modified, but we are not yet at a real minimal level. Certainly all public city programs have been suspended, recreation, special events, sports. We've reduced our bus schedules. We've closed public facilities such as the library and the Marsh Interpretive Center. But core city services are still available through appointment and via email and phone. And we do have quite a bit of business that has continued, at least in the first part of this week. But we are slowly seeing, additional isolation requirements come into place, which does decrease traffic in and around City Hall as well. What I would, I guess, like to share with the community to begin with is that if you're looking for city services, please jump on the city's website, cityofarcata.org. Right from the front page, you can get to a list of all of the services in the city and how to access them at this time when the main doors at City Hall are locked during the day. We do still have people staffing every department within the city, answering phones and available to help with those services at this time. We do not have a shelter-in-place order yet, so as long as we are still operational, we will still be staffing each of those phones and offices. In terms of financial impacts, what we're seeing already is that the virus impacts around this epidemic are going to be tremendous and substantial in our community. Businesses in Arcata are creative, and they certainly have tried to modify to maintain even minimal income generating. But each day, as we see more restrictive isolation requirements, the deepening impacts on our economy are also being felt. Community development right now is working with the chamber to complete some outreach to business this week and to seek if there are some ways that we can support. I was handed an email shortly before I walked in, but I might not be able to retrieve it quickly. But the Humboldt County Small Business Development Council does have a fabulous website. There's a link from cityofarcata.org if there's a local business that's looking for short-term business loan and continuity assistance. The Small Business Development Council is taking a lead role in our region on that. In terms of school closures, HSU has announced that they will be on an online platform for the remainder of the school year. All Arcata schools, as most people know, are closed through March 27th. However, Eureka just moved to an April 19th date, so I think that we could see other districts moving forward in that direction. We did meet on our homelessness services working group today via Zoom, and our primary partner with Arcata House Partnership that works in servicing our homeless population is maintaining basic services, distribution of food and commodities, hygiene products. They are working in the one-stop, which often is referred to as the annex near the bus station. They are working through a window, but they are creative and they are still providing services and meals every day. They are fairly full in both their adult and their family shelter, but they're basically sheltering in place the people that are there and maintaining those individuals both day and night. And right now their report is that their food service levels and their support from volunteers and staff is strong, and they don't have any needs for food donations at this point. They have reached out and they are also providing meals to other facilities such as Arcata Bay Crossing facilities where there are many people that are already sheltering in place. So if there are other needs in the community, feel free to reach out to the city manager's office and we can try to connect some of the larger facilities with food service if necessary. We are at this point recognizing that we are continuing to get into a more restrictive mode, and we are working on what we would call our continuity of city government plan. So this is really to ensure that if we are in a shelter-in-place environment, that critical functions are preserved. So these include water, sewer, police and emergency response, and then internal to the city, accounts payable, payroll, being able to meet the needs of our vendors, Emergency inspections. You know, we unfortunately had a very catastrophic single-family home house fire this week. That type of incident requires an inspection. So we will have inspectors on, certainly for emergency services. And we will maintain some critical city street, public space maintenance, and hazard removal. So we're working on that sort of continuity of city government plan if we do continue to go into a reduction mode. I can certainly answer questions about any city service, but quite frankly, the details around this incident could take another hour for me to list off. So I was going to end by sharing really that your city staff's true dedication comes through in challenging times this week and have done a fantastic job in keeping core services running smoothly and operations available to the public. I will turn this back to the mayor and ask if there's any more specific details. I could answer questions in a number of areas, but would like to focus specifically on what your interest is. And then we do have public comment at some point here in the room, as well as in writing, that I would like to read into the report. Thank you.
Well, I would like to have public comment first. This might be unusual, but if somebody is in the council chamber, I think that would be something that would be important for us to hear. And for a city manager to read, if it's not excessive, comments that we've received from the public by email.
Okay, we'll let our public member here go first. I'm going to ask him to just come forward and maybe stand just kind of before that cup so you're close enough to be heard well.
Will I be on the camera?
You won't. Do you want to be on the camera?
No, it's okay.
Okay. I can turn it around.
Right. Hi, my name is Jack DeCorso. A lot of my questions were just answered because I came here to advocate for the homeless people. But I prepared some words to say. Right now, people all over America are losing faith in their federal government and are looking towards their state and local branches for leadership. With businesses temporarily closing and a threat of an economic depression and the need to social distance, myself and other students feel it's crucial we set the infrastructure and networks to care for each other. We believe that for the city and county to save money and lives, preventive care measures need to be taken. The city has an obligation now to strengthen everyone's immune systems. Lots of people who live in and around Arcata live outside. The wet and cold conditions outside threaten your immune system and can increase the severity of a respiratory infection. It is important for us to social distance in order to slow the spread of COVID-19, but it is equally important to make sure that those who have to weather the virus are in the very best health they can be. We cannot assume that everyone who gets sick will go to the hospital. The healthcare here is poor. We cannot let those people die outside. These people already need blankets, food, and access to sanitary products and services all the time, but now more than ever. Rescue Mission in Eureka is no longer letting people into their women's shelter. I assume that soon it will be the same for the men's shelter. While it's true that we need to keep our distance now, it is also true that it still gets cold at night. It is worth mentioning that with our businesses closing, people are not going to work. Their finances are threatened, and we need assurance that those who lose wages because of COVID-19 are not going to be evicted from their homes. The city of Arcata and Humboldt County also have an opportunity to change everything. COVID-19 has demonstrated how our supply chain is vulnerable and how cooperation needs to first start within a community. I said earlier that it's possible for us to go into an economic depression. Now is the time to build a network of mutual aid. Wait, we might not have the resources or the people left to allocate justly. We need to do more than provide food to some people. We need to build a community of aid. So I'm asking the council, what will we do to protect the health of people who are homeless? And what will we do to ensure that unjust evictions do not happen? And how will we protect Arcata from a recession? Thank you.
Right. Vice Mayor Patino, why don't you go ahead and make your comments on the subject?
Well, on the COVID-19, I'm trusting the city staff is doing all they can, and I'm attempting to shelter in place myself as well as I can. So, yeah, I don't have any more comments on COVID-19. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Watson, comments that you have?
I don't really I guess my only comment is regarding the speaker's questions of the council. As far as the rental assistance issue, it's something that I've just become aware of the conversation, and I think it definitely require a lot of consideration and research. So it's something I think is a complex issue, and if it comes up in the future, I'll definitely need a lot of input and time to think about it.
Councilmember Pereira?
Yeah, a few comments on this. First of all, Karen, thank you to you and to all of our staff for how hard you're all working. Definitely can relate to the ever-evolving nature of this response and the threat that it poses to our community with COVID-19. So one, I hope that you all are taking care of yourselves because I think we will be in this for the long haul, unfortunately. So I just want to make sure our staff are taking care of themselves and you're taking care of yourself. I also want to let the community know that there is a resource. There's a community information line that folks can call into Monday through Friday. I think it's from 8 a.m. to about 7 p.m. So if folks do have questions, non-medical questions about COVID-19, they can call 441-5000. And I think all of us should just make sure to share that information out with the community. There are folks that are staffing those phones that are keeping a close eye on this ever-evolving situation. So folks that are, representing nonprofits or businesses, individuals that have concerns about what's the latest, definitely call 441-5000. And then I also would like for us to put on either our next agenda or to have a special meeting specifically on an eviction moratorium and to have that conversation as a council. I know Karen, you'll be speaking some comments into the record that are in opposition to this. I think it's really important we have the conversation as a community and really assess how we're going to respond to the economic impacts of COVID-19 to our community. We're already seeing the business impacts. We're seeing the impacts on workers. And I think the sooner we look at eviction moratorium, the better. I think it's something that, there is a lot of concern and uncertainty about how this situation is going to evolve. So any certainty that we can give in a very uncertain situation, I think can be really helpful to our community. And I hope that other cities and the County of Humboldt are also looking at those options as well. There's obviously nuance in terms of how an eviction moratorium would look. And I would welcome, that discussion and for us to look at all the different options. But I think it's something that we shouldn't wait to see how things are going to play out. This is something that's going to our community is going to be facing it for quite some time. So I think the sooner we act, the better.
Thank you. That as I said before, it's obvious that this is unprecedented, and we have not reached the peak of the impact that's going to have on ourselves and our families and other members of the community. One thing that I'm concerned about, maybe just because of the age that I am, is for seniors who are expected to be be within their homes, ways and connections for them to be able to get the food they need, and also for people who are already homeless and are food insecure. I don't know if the line that Councilmember Pereira has that information, but if it doesn't, I'm interested in seeing ways that the city on its website can provide information that can connect those people with resources so that they can get nutrition under these circumstances. And I think it's important to address the certainly severe dangers of unemployment and people who, because of their financial situation, will not be able to pay their rent. And what is the best way of handling that between what the city can do and what the state is doing or can do. And it's something that that I certainly going to take under advisement as something to have for an agenda item in the near future.
Michael, I had a question.
Yes.
Or something to say. Yeah. I guess when we're talking about eviction, to me, or at least my understanding is the city has no part in the eviction process that I know of. And I'd like to understand what is the city's role in eviction process. Usually it occurs to me that it's noticed and it's the sheriff that handles it, not city police. So I guess I'd like to know, what is our current role in the eviction process, and are we looking to change that?
I can have City Attorney Nancy Diamond weigh in if you would like, Mayor.
I mean, there are limits about what we can talk now. So I guess as long as we're still on COVID, is that our? I mean, you're not the city attorney,
Yeah, no,
Karen, but
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yes, the governor did issue a COVID-19 response executive order that's specific to evictions and foreclosures, and it provides local authority to evaluate and, as appropriate, take measures. There's many different ways that we're seeing this rolled out by different communities. Some are providing temporary moratoria against just commercial evictions due to non-payment of rent when the non-payment has arisen from an ability to prove closure due to COVID-19 response or substantial loss of income due to COVID-19 response. Some communities are also taking measures to adopt these kinds of moratoria against residential evictions associated with layoff or reduction in hourly pay due to reduction in work, again, associated with COVID-19, when the non-payment of rent is because of a substantial reduction in income. We're seeing these kinds of moratorias develop in different ways. Some are being adopted through urgency ordinances at the city council level. Some are being adopted through emergency powers at the local level. If the council is interested, Karen and I can work together to make a proposal, bring that to you either at the April 1st meeting or as Councilmember Pariah requested at a special meeting at your pleasure.
So I guess my question is, are we empowered as a city to say to a landlord, we put a moratorium on all evictions for the COVID, and we can do that as a city even though we normally don't process eviction?
Well, I appreciate your caution, and many attorneys or public agency attorneys around the state are also voicing concern over potential challenges to local agencies that undertake these kinds of actions. Most of the moratoria that we're seeing are very short-lived, and they're very prescribed in terms of when these kinds of evictions are prohibited, so that it really has to be a COVID response provable event. It's not just a blanket eviction prohibition. But I guess I have to say we are in completely uncharted territory, and it's hard to know exactly what is supportable
ultimately, in hindsight, after hopefully we've passed through this, and if there are any legal challenges, they make their way to the court. Hopefully there won't be challenges. Hopefully people recognize these unusual circumstances, and each local government is addressing it as appropriate to the needs of local government.
Would that include foreclosures also?
Fortunately, the state, through the governor's executive order, has taken the initiative on that and has issued a foreclosure ban associated with COVID-19 responses that we've listed here for the eviction. So foreclosure is not something that the local agencies need to be concerned about.
Thank you.
Karen, at this point, I mean, this is ultimately the decision of the council, but what do you see as the appropriate role for the city in this situation now?
I'd have to work with the city attorney to bring some options back. I think time is of the essence in terms of if this is something that the council would like us to consider, then I would suggest working with you as the mayor to figure out what time we would need to provide some options and come back probably within the next, few days or week at the most to a special meeting, even if, it would probably only take us an hour or less to have a specific conversation if that's the will of the council.
Speaking for me, I'd like to see it happen as soon as possible. So special meeting, great.
So what is the pleasure of the other members of the council? Brett, what is your pleasure on this?
I'm fine with what you guys want to do. If you want to have a special meeting, that's fine. That's fine with me.
Councilmember Pereira?
Yes, I absolutely support doing a special meeting for this. Thank you.
All right, so we can work with staff to see when they could be ready to do that.
Okay.
And also in general on COVID-19 response, what Karen, what do you see as appropriate role of the city? One of the things that you and I have discussed is if there are directives from the state, what role does the city have in enforcing them? And I had some complaints of people that, that, for instance, the bars were staying open and hadn't closed down, and or if other businesses remain open in spite of directives from the governor, what is the appropriate role for the city to play in terms of encouraging business owners to close or enforcing the fact that they would be closed by the city explicitly?
Yeah. We have been monitoring throughout the last couple of evenings, and some of the strongly worded suggestions and recommendations from the governor's office have come around bars and restaurants. We're seeing more compliance each night. We'll be doing those checks again tonight. Until the orders from the governor come with very specific requirements, at this point he has stopped just short of making them mandatory. What I will say is that we do have several bars that certainly have remained open the last couple of nights, but the participation and our residents seem to be abiding very well by the social distancing, and we're finding very, very low crowds out and about in the downtown area or throughout Arcata in those establishments. So I think it'll be a combination of those restaurants trying to figure out how they can comply with potentially takeout at this point, food service. And we've been talking with businesses around, if they wanted to put up a cone outside their business with a sign in it that says, please reserve this site for pickup and takeout. Park here, call this number, and we'll bring the food out to you, as a way that the city could potentially help some of our restaurants still maintain some level of business. But right now, we're not doing hard enforcement because the governor's recommendations have not been mandatory.
could you summarize what types of businesses? Well, I've seen that certain businesses have regarded as being critical. I don't know if you could summarize which businesses are allowed to operate and which businesses are either required or required to close.
Yeah. At this point, the advisory is all around sort of social gathering areas, restaurants, bars, wineries, taverns, general service, pharmacies, places like in Arcata, CVS, all of the grocers, the farmers market are all being listed as still providing essential services and have not been included in any of the advisory or recommendations yet from the governor. But as I said, things are changing pretty rapidly. So right now it really is around our restaurants and, which at this point is no in-house dining, but still allowing for takeout and delivery, and the requested closure of all bars, taverns, wineries.
Right. So any other comments from council members relative to COVID-19 at this time?
I had one, Michael. I've noticed that some cities have closed their gyms also, being a place where everybody is sweating and breathing on each other. So do we have any ideas about that?
I only have anecdotally, I've heard that Hellsport closed today, and I'm not sure if that's the entire facility or just the pool. So I'll follow up on that. And the Arcata pool, I believe, has also closed. So I think those, well, there are some other small gyms. I guess I would have to do a full assessment to see if they've closed as well, but the two large ones.
Thank you.
All right. So go
Michael,
ahead, Brett.
sorry, really quick, Michael. I'll just add really quick. I've been told that the co-op is doing special hours for seniors from 7 to 8 a.m. I would verify that for anyone heads down there to use those.
They're promoting it on their social media.
At the same time, the governor has encouraged seniors to shelter at home, but if people who are seniors do not have someone who can pick up groceries for them, that may be necessary for them to go into the stores.
Yeah, and Mayor, we don't have a program associated with that, but let's please put the call out. If there is any senior in Arcata that is homebound and isolated and needs help with somebody picking up and delivering food, please call the city manager's office. We will figure out a way to make that happen.
Right. And any other further comments from council? Right. Thank you. Next is.
Wait, I've got to do some public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So we've got several items of public comment that came in via email. The first one is from Anna Hetko. And dear City Council members, I urge you to contact Humboldt County Public Health Officer and Humboldt County Supervisors to request that they follow the lead of Mendocino County Public Health Officer in declaring a shelter in place. With Humboldt State University closing this week and students directed to return to off-campus housing in the community, there is now an immediate need to curtail the asymptomatic spreading of COVID-19 by students. The student population greatly outnumbers that of its resident community in Arcata, and its impact will be enormous. Our public health department is working tirelessly to create much-needed infrastructure. However, they are not addressing important issues. They are not dissuading the idea that because we have no cases at present, that we have no infections of spreading, which encourage reckless behavior based on misinformation. We know that the reason the case numbers are low is not because there is a low number of people infected. It is clearly low because there is a low number of people being tested. With our student population, we are at a much greater risk for asymptomatic spreading and need for shelter in place than that of Mendocino. I believe that Mendocino County can be of assistance and guidance for Humboldt County. Please refer to their attached statement regarding their recent decision to shelter in place. Thank you so much for all you are doing. It is greatly appreciated. Please encourage our officials to take this action and protect our wonderful community. This is the first one. The second one is from Edith Drive. and John Mylan, Christina, Ian, and Gwendolyn, 5 years old today. Happy birthday, Gwendolyn. Let's say that. I just heard the City Council may require landlords to reduce or delay rents for up to 120 days. I know these are hard and uncharted times, but this plan is not well thought out, and you are putting one group in front of the other for success. If there were a safety net for the owner landlord that we did not have to pay my mortgage, then I could see this as acceptable. Without those protections, this would ruin my family's financial future while sparing another. We are feeling the same strain as everyone. My wife works with after-school programs and has already been laid off, and we will struggle to pay for a family of 4, much less the path for others with reduced pay and unemployment insurance. Please do not mandate this burden on me. I had thought I had made a good decision to keep this property until I can afford to refinance on the market rebounded enough to sell. If the council passes this, I'm sure it would send me into foreclosure of this property if there are no protections for owners and landlords. I have owned this property since college, but have had to rent it as I can't afford to live in it, sell or refinance my only interest loan from before the 2008 financial crisis. I am able to put a little in each month to cover the difference between my mortgage and the rent, and I know my renters who are in government assistance will not have issues paying rent. But if you say that they don't have to, they won't, and I will find the extra $1,800 a month to cover that difference. I do have compassion for others and would gladly work with my tenants on an individual basis as needed because my community is important to me. Would I give them a discount? Sure. Would I even let them stay a month for free? There is a good chance if we could work out a repayment plan, but this needs to be my decision unless you can give me protections where I don't have to make my payment either. Beyond the financial burden, forcing me into such a lopsided situation would make me lose all respect and faith in the council. If you are truly considering this, I hope that you can wait until protections for homeowners are available as well. I think other provision would be to lift this if the situation were to change sooner as well. Please don't penalize me because I own a house instead of rent. I do not see how that is fair. I appreciate your desire to help in this situation. Please find a solution that helps all, not just one. Just because I own a rental property doesn't mean I'm better off than others that are struggling in this situation. The next is from Heather Bergen. Please consider the reaching far and catastrophic trickle-down economic effects that would result if all rent was deemed as non-collectible within the city. Homeowners pay their mortgage, property taxes, and home insurance from rental proceeds. This action offers them no relief. It just shifts the burden of our current and unfortunate economic crisis onto them. An influx of foreclosures could result, and investors may decide to pull out of the Arcata housing market due to its disregard for individual property rights and hostile policy against them. Neither of those bode well for the future of the rental market, nor the specific renters that this relief strives to protect. They will ultimately find themselves without their rental in an even sparser rental market. It is generous that the city wishes to provide some relief to residents at this time. However, unless this proposal is done via rent subsidy paid for by the city is doing nothing more than spending other people's money. Further, the city could potentially be liable for damages suffered by these property owners due to this policy. How can a moratorium on rents be considered without a moratorium on mortgage payments? National news suggests that most governmental agencies are encouraging individuals to contact their banks directly for relief, and so it would follow that renters should reach out directly to their landlord property managers if they are unable to pay due to COVID-19 related hardships. Perhaps the city could suspend collection of water bills at this time in an effort to provide relief. This would benefit all people who are impacted, as it is not just the rental class that is currently without the means for paying bills. This current proposal is nothing more than the city shifting the burden onto those who are also suffering. I know property management companies are already working with impacted individuals, and this is how it should be. Thank you. We just have a few more. This is from Christy Hellam. Greetings. Because of the pandemic, I could fly home, and I'm out if the country and unable to attend the meeting. I own a home on Marie Court and raised my 2 kids in Arcata since 1976. I am currently renting my home to a wonderful family there. It is not the home I own, and my retirement plans are on a very limited income, include moving back into that home in November. I have been financially hurt by the pandemic and cannot work as a self-employed person. And being a thoughtful and caring citizen and homeowner, I would allow my tenants to stay if they follow the standard communication protocols already in place and ask for a delay or reduction in payments. Skipping a rental payment by mandate of a city council, I will have no way to pay my mortgage. It will be my additional financial crisis at that point. Let's allow some respect for Arcatans to listen to each other and help each other. It is more appropriate to let the financial assistance and solutions come from U.S. relief. I understand that there might be an initiative on tonight's City Council meeting offering tenants to pass the financial crisis onto the homeowner. I have under $1,000 in my bank account. I take care of my mortgage, make any repairs, and hire someone to keep the house in perfect condition and manage it well. I am writing the Arcata City Council to urge you to not be too hasty, mandating landlords to not collect rents for 3 months or any version of this. I am a citizen suffering financially with my own situation and cannot see how taking on other financial issues makes sense. This is a direct punishment to the average middle-class citizen who have invested in the city for decades. Yours warmly. The next one is from Gail McDowell. I am very concerned that the Arcata bars are still open during this health crisis. I drove by last night and today and was appalled that people are partying at these establishments. Please take action to shut them down now. Thank you, Arcata citizen and taxpayer. This next one is from Elizabeth Campbell. Dear City of Arcata, I understand that you are discussing the potential of stopping rents for the month of April and May inside the City of Arcata. At this point, our office has already taken precautions with our tenants, allowing them to make payment options or less rent based on their circumstance. We understand that people are experiencing hardships. However, our owners still have to make their mortgage payments and keep these homes as rentals for their tenants. If they fall behind on their mortgage, the tenants will eventually be out in the end when it goes to foreclosure. Please understand that property management community are already putting things into play for our tenants at this time to make it easier for them so they do not become homeless. And lastly, Kyra O'Rourke, to whom it may concern. I am an owner of Cottage Realty in McKinleyville and oversee multiple rental units. I'm concerned about enacting the law that allowing tenants to forego paying rent. We have already sent out communications and made plans to work with our tenants and if they are undergoing hardship. But if a tenant does not have to pay rent but is able, they still won't pay the rent. This will in turn cause my homeowners to not be able to pay their mortgages, taxes, and property taxes, and even buy food and basic necessities because they will find themselves moving toward foreclosure as well, since they will still ultimately be responsible for the debt owed on the property. As the landlords, our hands are tied. We are not going to stop the payment of property taxes, personal taxes, all utility bills, car loans, credit card payments, etc. Then we need to make sure rent is still being paid if people are able to pay. Why should the property owners bear the burden alone? We are all collectively going to have to work together, but by passing a bill that ultimately places the burden on property owners, then we are only causing the tenants to eventually lose their home anyway. As a community, we are working with each other to get through this very difficult time. I do not want my tenants to become homeless, and I do not expect my owners to have to bear the burden either. We are working collectively to make sure that we are coming up with solutions for everyone. Regards. That is the end of the public comment that we have on that item.
What are the
Michael, you'll need to unmute.
What are the limits, Nancy? What are the limits of what we can talk about at this time?
You've got this as an agendized COVID-19 response, so this is on the agenda. It's not like just oral communication. So you're welcome to talk about any and all aspects of response, including an eviction moratorium and any of the other things that the city manager presented to.
So Brett, any further comments?
No.
Paul, any further comments?
I'm assuming we're going to have a special meeting where we can get into the details of this. So I don't have any comments at this moment.
All right, Sophia, any further comments?
No, thank you.
All right. And I think that we're done with discussion of COVID-19 at this meeting. Next is review city council vacancy and liaison assignments in light of former council member Ornellis's resignation.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So you accepted the resignation of Council Member Susan Ornelas earlier on your consent calendar. And I just wanted to talk through two pieces. One is just make sure the council is aware of the potential replacement options for that position. And the way that a council vacancy prior to the ending of a term can be filled, you have, I guess I'll say 3 options, 2 options, and actually in this case, I'll just say all options really lead to about the same result. So upon the determination that you have a vacancy, the council typically has 60 days to fill that vacancy by appointment. If the council does not fill a vacancy through an appointment process in 60 days, then automatically a special meeting is called at the next available general election. Now, in this situation, her position and term is up in December of 2020. That term would already be on the next general election, which is in November of 2020. So regardless of your action, if you wanted to, start an appointment process, either way, that position is still going to be on the November 2020 ballot as a vacant position. Now, your options for appointment are twofold. In this case, because the term ends in December, the appointment is really only going to be through that next election period. So the confines that you try to make an appointment in 60 days, in essence, to allow that person to fulfill a longer term are just simply not in play because this term ends in December. So if you appoint somebody, you could appoint somebody tonight. You could all agree on somebody that you wanted to appoint, or we could run through a special appointment process similar to how originally Councilmember Brett Watson was appointed, and then he went through an election process after that. But we could go through an appointment process. I guess what I will just say is I don't think you have a real strict time limit on that, simply because this position the term ends in December. So regardless of what you do in the next, few months, this position will be on that November ballot. So if I haven't fully confused you, the city attorney might be able to straighten it out.
So Vice Member Tino, do you have any comment on this?
Yeah, I do. I think that since we have an election in November, we shouldn't bother with an appointment at this point. So that's where I am on it.
Councilmember Watson?
I agree with Vice Mayor Patino.
Councilmember Pereira?
I agree as well.
And I also agree. So what we will do then is that this position will be vacant until December, and then it will be available for members of the community to run on in the November election.
All right, so Mayor, this is City Manager Karen Deemer again. I would like just to run through quickly the liaison appointments that Councilmember Ornelas was holding, and just ensure that the alternate is either able to handle that assignment, or if we would like to agendize a new appointment at your next meeting. So probably the largest position that she's holding right now is as the primary representative for the Humboldt County Office Association of Governments, HCOG, and Mayor Winkler is her alternate. Would you be able to fulfill those duties through 2020?
Let's see, I can do so as long as those meetings are electronic. That being a senior, I am not attending any meetings in person. The next meeting will be remote, and if they continue to be remote, I can fulfill those duties.
Okay. And then she's just the alternate on the Humboldt County Indian Gaming Local Community Benefit Committee. Councilmember Watson is already the primary, so I'm assuming we don't need a secondary alternate. They haven't met for a couple of years, and I don't suspect they'll meet this year. So then we go to Redwood Coast Energy Authority. She is the alternate there. If there was somebody that wanted to be that alternate, I certainly could bring that back on an agenda item. Right now, Michael Winkler is our primary, and I assume that you're making those meetings pretty well.
Same situation. Then did I expect that the meeting for this month has been canceled, and my understanding is that those will also be remote and electronic.
Okay. And then she's the alternate for Sister City, and then she is the primary for the Arcata Chamber of Commerce. So Councilmember Watson is the alternate and has indicated to me that he thinks he can fulfill those duties. But did you have any other comments that you wanted to make tonight, Councilmember Watson, on that?
I'd be happy to do it.
And then she is the alternate for Main Street. And right now the primary is Mayor Winkler. Do you need any support on that one?
I don't yet know if they can operate remotely, but that would be required. If it were not possible for them to have remote meetings, then I would need someone else to step in there.
Is there anyone that would be willing to serve as an alternate for Main Street? They are meeting twice monthly at 4:30 on the second and fourth Thursdays.
You know, I have the same problem as Michael Winkler, and then I should be sheltering in place, not going to meetings. So I'm not going to try to be the alternate for the Arcata Main Street. So I'm out of it.
And I just don't want to do it, so I'm not interested.
All right, then.
I can't commit to it, but I would like to think that Arcata Main Street, given the circumstances, would make accommodations to do a call-in at the very least for those that need to. That seems like a pretty easy thing to accommodate. Hopefully that won't be an issue.
All right, then I would expect that that's what will happen, and we will proceed accordingly.
Okay. That is it on that item.
Right, dates of future meetings. We have an annual study session with committee and commission chairs scheduled for Monday, April 6th. And what is the pleasure of the council on this, Vice Mayor Patino?
I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about.
We scheduled a annual study session with the committee and commission chairs on April 6th. That I think it should be pretty obvious that this is not possible, but I just wanted to get feedback from other councilors.
I didn't know. I had no input on it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Pereira.
Karen, go ahead.
I was just going to share that we have canceled at this point all other city committee meetings. We've canceled one planning commission meeting, and then after your great launch tonight as the first ever Zoom gone out live broadcasted meeting in Humboldt County, we will try this format with our planning commission to hold their next meeting, but otherwise we've canceled all committee meetings at this point. And I would probably recommend that we cancel this one as well.
Do we need a motion to that effect?
No, I don't think that you need a motion to that effect.
All right, so this
Just as long as you're all in concurrence.
This meeting is canceled, and then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for Karen and other members of the city to make this possible under these difficult circumstances of continuing for the city council to meet and helping get the city's business done.
All right.